Right. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to you all, depending on where you are joining us from. Thank you very much for joining this side event organized by the United Nations Institute for Disarmament Research, UNIDIR. My name is Anna Mensah, and I am an associate researcher at UNIDIR. Today's event is co-sponsored by the governments of Finland, Germany, and Switzerland, and we are very grateful for their support. Today's event will focus on the launch of the French and Spanish versions of UNIDIR's reference methodology for national weapons and ammunition management baseline assessments. Since 2015, UNIDIR, together with regional organizations, states, UN entities, and international partners, has supported 11 states in conducting weapons and ammunition management baseline assessments. Over the years, interest and demand for the baseline assessments and the methodology has grown and has increased, which UNIDIR received it very positively. In this regard, we codified and launched UNIDIR's reference methodology for WAM baseline assessment first in July this year. So the methodology was launched in English. And for today's event, we are very excited and happy that we are going to see the launch of the French and Spanish editions. The launch of these translated versions, we hope, will promote uptake by wider stakeholders from different regions of the world. So we are very happy and thank you again for joining us. UNIDIR is also honored to be accompanied by an expert panel who will share their interventions and their perspectives on WAM in general, weapons and ammunition management, and also on how baseline assessments support work on promoting and strengthening WAM frameworks. So without wasting much time, we will go on to the remarks, the opening remarks, and then to the launch of the methodology. A few housekeeping rules. While the panelists are making their interventions, they will only give introductory remarks, and we will encourage participants to drop your questions and your comments in the chat. And after their interventions, I will do well to pick up the questions and the comments and assign them to the panelists so that they will respond to that. If your question or your comment is not responded to, do not worry, we will follow up with you and also share additional information. So please feel free to put your questions and your comments in the chat as the event is going on. Also, we have put in place several security arrangements on this virtual platform, but should the platform be interrupted for any reason during the event, it will be shut down and a new link will be sent to all panelists and participants. So kindly note that you are in a secure and a safe space, and we hope to have a smooth and enriching discussion. So at this time, I will hand over the floor to Mr. Ilka Mirimaki, who is an attaché and a desk officer on small arms and light weapons and other conventional weapons at the Ministry for Foreign Affairs of Finland. Ilka, thank you very much for joining us, and you have the floor.
Thank you very much indeed, Anna. Excellencies, dear colleagues, greetings from Helsinki. It is a great pleasure for me to deliver the opening remarks on behalf of Finland. I would like to start by expressing our appreciation to UNIDIR and the co-sponsors Germany and Switzerland for hosting this very important and timely event, and for the publication of the Spanish and French versions of the reference methodology for national weapons and ammunition management baseline assessments. Indeed, as Anna pointed out in her introductory remarks, this event follows up the BMS7 virtual event held in July, in which the English-speaking edition of UNIDIR's reference methodology for national weapons and ammunition management baseline assessments was launched. Supporting states' efforts to strengthen their weapons and ammunition management frameworks is a priority for Finland. Since 2014, we have supported UNIDIR's conventional arms programs work on weapons and ammunition management. Our support has in particular focused on capacity building to develop and strengthen national weapons and ammunition management frameworks in the Federal Republic of Somalia, in cooperation with the federal government of Somalia and other international and regional partners. UNIDIR's weapons and ammunition management baseline assessment with states are really grounded and centered on national ownership, facilitated by a multi-stakeholder dialogue. We consider this bottom-up approach very important as it contributes to shared responsibility among stakeholders for the governance, for the accountability, and for the sustainability of weapons and ammunition management. The federal government of Somalia has made tangible progress in this regard, including the integration of weapons and ammunition management into ongoing security sector reform processes and the drafting of a national weapons and ammunition management strategy. This ultimately demonstrates the importance of international cooperation and support in weapons and ammunition management. Encouraged by the promising results, we remain committed to continuing this effective collaboration with UNIDIR. We would like to emphasize that comprehensive, holistic, and systematic national weapons and ammunition management baseline assessments are an essential prerequisite for informing and guiding effective strategic formulation, program planning, and monitoring and evaluation. In addition, and in a wider scope, such assessments support governance and accountability. Baseline assessments lead to the elaboration of a national weapons and ammunition management roadmap that clearly articulates gaps and assistance needs at the national level. Now, coming back to the launch of the Spanish and French editions of the Weapons and Ammunition Management Reference Methodology. We congratulate UNIDIR for the publication of both editions and hope that this will spark interest and facilitate uptake by member states, regional organizations, and international partners in different regions. We recognize the value of national weapons and ammunition management baseline assessments as a practical tool for evaluation of the status of key weapons and ammunition management functional areas, the identification of risk and vulnerabilities in arms and ammunition management, and areas for enhancement at the national level. In conclusion, I would like to express our continued commitment to support UNIDIR and states in different regions in improving their weapons and ammunition management frameworks, and we encourage all member states and stakeholders to consult and utilize the reference methodology as appropriate. Thank you very much once again. I wish you interesting discussions and a successful event.
Thank you very much, Ilkka, for delivering these remarks on behalf of the government of Finland. We are very grateful for your support and we look forward to continuing the cooperation with the government of Finland on this very important work. I will now turn the floor to Mr. Albrecht von Wittke, who is the head of division of the Conventional Arms Control and CSBM of the German Federal Foreign Office. Albrecht, thank you very much for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Anna. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to speak here on behalf of the German federal government. First of all, I would like to thank UNIDIR for inviting us today, alongside with my Finnish colleague, for today's launch of the French and the Spanish version of UNIDIR's reference methodology for national weapons and ammunition management baseline assessments after officially launching the methodology altogether in July in the margins of BMS 7. Effective weapons and ammunition management has been for many years now at the heart of Germany's disarmament and arms control efforts in the conventional area. We focus our efforts on three areas in particular. Firstly, Germany supports strengthening regional exchange and networks. Our experience has shown that regionally coordinated processes significantly enhance small arms control and ammunition control as well. In the framework of these processes, different dimensions of small arms and ammunition control are linked. Concrete targets are set, multi-actor approaches are enabled, and regular platforms for interinstitutional and international coordination and exchange are set up, thus leading to better results in fighting the small arms and ammunition diversion problem. Secondly, Germany supports the capacity building measures to support the fight against illicit arms trade, as well as to improve states' capacities to control weapons and ammunition and to destroy surplus stockpiles. Finally, Germany strives to support existing and the development of new international disarmament and arms control norms and standards. As many other delegations, we believe that conventional ammunition, the A in WAM, is a topic that to date has not been sufficiently or effectively addressed in the context of other arms control instruments. We believe the UN should build on the very substantial consensus recommendations recently agreed in the United Nations group of governmental experts on this topic and elaborate a new global framework addressing existing gaps in through-life ammunition management, including international cooperation and assistance. The group's recommendations have been faithfully transposed into the draft of the resolution entitled Problems Arising from the Accumulation of Conventional Ammunition Stockpiles and Surplus, which is a bit cumbersome, but the draft has been issued as A/C.1/76/L47. This draft suggests to establish an open-ended working group starting in 2022 to elaborate this new global framework as a set of political commitments. The draft resolution is still open for co-sponsorship, and we hope for broadest possible support in the ongoing first committee. Now, coming back to the methodology for national WAM baseline assessments to be presented here. We believe that this important tool contributes to all three of the areas I just mentioned for Germany's activities in conventional arms control. It is not only states that can benefit greatly from national WAM baseline assessments by providing a comprehensive overview of the situation at the start of such activities and lay the ground for a subsequent needs assessment and national action plans. Such a tool can also increase and promote consistency in this domain within regional and multilateral processes. This is why it is, in our view, ideal if the tool is as accessible and widespread as possible. Launching a French and Spanish version of the methodology is therefore an important step to universalize this tool, and we proudly support and congratulate UNIDIR on doing this. Germany has been supporting WAM activities in French and Spanish-speaking countries for many years now. I particularly want to highlight our support to the Caribbean Firearms Roadmap, as well as for the ECOWAS region and its implementation of the ECOWAS Convention on Small Arms through a dedicated plan of action. In these frameworks and beyond, Germany will remain committed to supporting states and regions in improving their weapons and ammunition management frameworks. We look forward to continue our cooperation with UNIDIR in this direction too. I'm looking forward to a fruitful exchange today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Albrecht, for your opening remarks and also for the great support that Germany is providing to UNIDIR, to regional organizations and to international organizations on supporting policies and frameworks on weapons and ammunition management. We are very grateful for that. So at this time, I will turn the floor to Mr. Hadi Gizindana, who is a co-author of the reference methodology that will be launched and also a senior researcher at UNIDIR. I once again like to encourage and invite participants to put their comments, their questions in the chat, and this will be picked up and discussed in the Q&A session. So thank you to Albrecht and to Ilka for your opening remarks. And now I hand over the floor to Hadi for the presentation of the methodology.
Thank you very much, Anna. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and dear friends, for me, it's a sincere pleasure to be speaking to you and with you here today. As has been noted, my name is Hadi Gizindana, and I'm a senior researcher at UNIDIR's Conventional Arms Program. At UNIDIR and in our Conventional Arms Program, we constantly seek to develop new ideas, promote knowledge, and to strengthen understandings on ways and means to improve and strengthen weapons and ammunition management practices and capacities. Our research work stream that seeks to strengthen and advance WAM policy and practice is structured in 4 different services. The first one includes the establishment and the support that we provide to states in assessing weapons and ammunition management baselines through these nationally led multi-stakeholder processes and our WAM reference methodology, thereby establishing national roadmaps in cooperation with international and regional partners. The second one is the gathering of lessons learned and the identification of good practices, continuous learning, and the enhancement of knowledge at different levels to inform improvements in WAM policy and practice. The third is the generation of demand-based practical tools for states and other interested parties to facilitate implementation efforts on the ground. And lastly is the facilitation of dialogue, international dialogue, and dialogue at different levels among member states, sub-regional and regional organizations, and other interested parties on ways to improve WAM policy and practice. Today, it is my pleasure to speak and introduce and present one of these demand-based practical and voluntary tools that UNIDIR has codified, UNIDIR's reference methodology for national weapons and ammunition management baseline assessments, the French and the Spanish versions of which we are very happy and pleased to launch and make publicly available during this event today. As has been noted before, this reference methodology codifies the methodology that UNIDIR has since 2014 been using to design and implement national baseline assessments jointly with 11 states from different regions on the African continent and from one state in the Middle East, in cooperation with our regional, sub-regional, United Nations, and other partners. The reference methodology, it draws from and builds upon the lessons learned and other activities that we have conducted for the codification of this reference methodology. Today, at the African regional level, WAM is recognized as a key contributor to the African Union Roadmap for Silencing the Guns. And WAM and these baseline assessments are also considered a key contributor and enabler of the 5-year action plan for the implementation of the ECOWAS Convention on Small Arms and Light Weapons. The codification of this reference methodology, which has been demand-driven, as I have noted before, and its public release in English, French, and Spanish responds to 2 particular needs and primary objectives. First is to fill a knowledge gap that existed before and to provide practical guidance and a reference methodology and a practical tool that allows interested party and provides them with guidance on the implementation of WAM baseline assessments at the national level and at a strategic level. Second is to enhance the knowledge of states and interested parties and to enable them to support assistance requesting states jointly and collaboratively in undertaking such baseline assessments. The publication and the release of the methodology in these 3 languages also seeks to enhance transparency and is expected to contribute to the existing and growing body of knowledge on different assessment methods, methodologies, and approaches that are associated to WAM. Now, why conduct a national WAM baseline assessment in the first place? A reference to this has been made. It's the importance of the establishment of a justified relational reference in space and time of WAM institutional and operational capacities, practices, and procedures, which allows comparison and measurability of variation and progress over time, as well as the impact in different peace and security environments. And such a baseline can be established, followed, monitored, and reviewed across a number of key WAM functional areas or specific key WAM functional areas at different levels, including the national level, but also the sub-regional or regional level, or at other levels as well. And as has been already mentioned as well previously, such baseline assessments are an essential prerequisite for informing and guiding effective and strategic formulation, program planning, as well as monitoring and evaluation. Now, the objective of a national WAM baseline assessment is generally to assist states in their efforts to comprehensively and systematically assess WAM institutions and their policies and operational processes and capacities. And such assessments are undertaken in line with international, regional, and sub-regional obligations, commitments that have been made by states, as well as the relevant international standards and technical guidelines, namely the Modular Small Arms Control Compendium and the International Ammunition Technical Guidelines, as well as related and additional international guidelines and resources that are available in this area. Specifically, a baseline assessment has 4 specific aims. First is to map national institutions and their roles and responsibilities for the full life cycle management of arms and ammunition. Second is the identification of the current status and priority needs, as well as areas for enhancement across the life cycle. Third is the collective and joint identification of options for the host government to implement such enhancements. And fourth is the design or the review of a national roadmap or a strategic document and plan to strengthen the framework governing weapons and ammunition management. Now, to elaborate a little bit on the key and general guiding principles, first is the importance and the crucial aspect of national ownership. This is the key guiding principle and a prerequisite for a national WAM baseline assessment to be effective. So from the starting point and the design and the conceptualization phase of the national WAM baseline assessment, as well as during the assessment itself, this process and its findings and the results, they are to be nationally led, owned, and driven. Second is the recognition that efforts to better manage and control weapons and ammunition require a comprehensive and integrated approach to weapons and ammunition management that is linked to and informs broader security sector, rule of law, armed violence reduction, and peace building processes. Equally important is inclusiveness, with a wide range of stakeholders operating at different levels of WAM policy and practice that are involved in such exercises and in such baseline assessments, so that they're conducted in an inclusive and consultative manner with the full participation of the relevant local, national, regional, and international stakeholders. Another key and general guiding principle for our work in this area and for national WAM baseline assessment is a gender-sensitive approach to arms control and disarmament more general, and to WAM in particular, and the participation of women in WAM initiatives and activities, and in all the activities associated to the conduct of a baseline assessment. Now, to give you a very brief overview and situate the baseline assessment in context, that's to note that the baseline assessment process and the reference methodology intervenes at the intersection of the strategic level with the operational level. And it essentially includes stakeholder mapping, a mapping of processes, and an assessment of capacities, practices, and procedures. The key weapons and ammunition management functional areas of such an assessment include the national coordinating mechanism, the legal and regulatory framework at the national level, transfer controls, stockpile management, through to marking, record keeping, tracing, and profiling, as well as the processing of recovered arms and the treatment of recovered ammunition, all the way to collection and disposal, including destruction at the end. Now, here, what I'd like to note as well is that throughout these functional areas, a particular attention is paid to the distinctions in weapons management and ammunition management. And the reference methodology takes this into account. This is also to say on the functional areas that these are not exclusive, and of course in the design or the conceptualization of a baseline assessment, these can be reviewed together with the host government and the national lead entity and be refined and adapted to the national context. Now, to give you a very brief overview and idea, typically such national weapons and ammunition management baseline assessments include, of course, planning and design phase, which typically takes up to 3 months. And then in country, it takes the form of a series of consultative meetings, both at the strategic policy as well as at the operational and technical levels, to facilitate an inclusive, participatory, and gender-sensitive dialogue with all relevant stakeholders at the different levels to inform the national baseline assessment. And the meetings, as you can see projected on the slide right now, these are organized in a sequence so as to allow the consultation of all these national actors and stakeholders at the national level during the duration of a baseline assessment over the course of 1 week, typically in country. Now, one of the key results of such national WAM baseline assessments and the starting point for follow-up activities to strengthen WAM is the development of a national roadmap to strengthen comprehensively the national framework that governs weapons and ammunition management. And these roadmaps, typically presented in the form of an annex to a findings report, include the current status of institutional capacities and processes, the WAM enhancement opportunities, options for implementation organized by key functional areas, prioritized over a time frame and including actor-specific attribution of WAM roles and responsibilities. Now here, what I wanted to do is to share a few examples from the 11 baseline assessments that UNIDIR, together with states and partners, have undertaken so far, of how these national baseline assessments have been used by these states and interested parties. At the strategic level, this has included the review or the informing of national security strategies or policies, the development of a dedicated national weapons and ammunition management strategy, or the development of the informing of the development of a dedicated national policy for ammunition management. In other cases, where applicable, these have been utilized to inform UN partial arms embargo regime benchmarking, implementation, reporting, and monitoring, as well as in other contexts as well, the legal review processes of national legislation and regulations for weapons and/or ammunition management. At the operational level, national WAM baseline assessments have served as an essential component in the subsequent review or development of national action plans, the development or the revision and adoption of general or specific operational procedures, as well as capacity building, programming, and activities in different areas of WAM. Now, at this stage, I take the opportunity to draw your attention to the WAM country insights that UNIDIR, in consultation and in cooperation with the 10 African states with whom we have conducted these baseline assessments that we have released. They provide a snapshot and a very quick overview and insight into these baseline assessments. With this, it's now my pleasure to announce the official launch and release of the French and Spanish versions of the reference methodology. And I would like to also at this stage take the opportunity to once again thank the governments that have supported us in this endeavor, as well as the government officials, representatives, experts, and practitioners who supported directly or indirectly the development of this reference methodology. This document, including its translations in different languages, would not have been possible without the support of all of them. And we are grateful for the continued cooperation and collaboration as we move forward in UNIDIR's research-based and informed approach to strengthen weapons and ammunition management policy and practice. It's also to say that that the reference methodology is considered a living, working reference document, which may be subject to future revisions or modifications based on new trends or findings or lessons learned from the application in different contexts and regions, and that we appreciate and welcome any feedback and comments from interested parties and practitioners as well. With this, I hope that this provided a good overview and introduction to the baseline reference methodology and the editions in French and Spanish. And I'm looking forward to the next panel discussion that will follow. Thank you very much, and looking forward to the discussion afterwards.
Thank you very much, Hadi Gizindana, for the great presentation on the methodology. It is very interesting to learn about the methodology, its different components and submodules, and how it is organized. I noted the key principles for organizing baseline assessments, especially on national ownership and inclusivity. And I look forward to us exploring that further during the discussion. I also appreciated the fact that that you said the methodology distinguishes between the assessment of weapons, frameworks, and also ammunition. And I think this is very important, as each of these components deserve a necessary attention. So it is great to learn that UNIDIR's methodology does this. I have already seen some questions coming in the chat, and I'm sure that we'll have a very lively discussion afterwards. So congratulations to Hadi and to UNIDIR's research team for developing this methodology and for the launch of the French and Spanish editions. At this point, I will now hand over to, we will now start the panel discussion. And our first speaker is Mr. Ivor Fung, who is the Deputy Chief of the Conventional Arms Branch of the United Nations Office of Disarmament Affairs. Mr. Fung will share UNODA's perspectives on the importance of WAM and how WAM baseline assessments contribute to the SG's agenda for disarmament and the work of other UN entities. Ivor, thank you very much for joining us, and you have the floor now.
Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you, UNIDIR, for associating the UN Office for Disarmament Affairs to this briefing, which I think has a lot of significance and is very important to us because the baseline assessment, it's part and parcel of the many efforts we have been trying to make either in the field or our headquarters to understand how weapons and ammunition should be effectively managed. And the assessment tool that you have come up with really is useful in this perspective. Needless to say that weapons and ammunition management is key, either key to arms control, key to disarmament, either you're talking from the perspective of safety or security. Weapons and ammunition management, when done effectively, it's key to arms control. From the perspective of UNODA, we've carried out a number of initiatives from policy and operational level. From policy level, I would like to indicate that already since 2015, the Secretary General has been reporting to the Security Council on the issue of small arms and light weapons, including weapons and ammunition management, in a very comprehensive way. The idea here is to bring the Security Council to begin in a systematic fashion to include in its work when it is formulating mandates for peace operation, to include weapons and ammunition management dimension. And since the Secretary General began reporting to the Council, we have seen some improvement in the work of the Council in terms of systematically including provisions of WAM in mandates for peace operations. So this is something that the Office for Disarmament Affairs does every 2 years. And just recently, last month, there was a debate in the Security Council under the chairmanship of Kenya on the issue. And one prerogative really stood out as an area in arms control where countries need to make a lot of improvement. And it is good that this baseline assessment is coming in a very timely fashion, and not just the English version, the French and Spanish version would increase leadership and building skills in countries that are most affected and that need this. So there is that policy work that we've been doing at the level of the Security Council. We've also been doing practical operational work, and I'm happy to see Savannah as part of this panel because she has been with us in developing a manual on how one can effectively benefit DDR programs on the ground. And it's not just the development of this manual, but we've also been able to conduct training on the basis of this manual, training to select experts who are involved daily in this area of work. And so that practical work is continuing. We're partnering with UNIDIR, with Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Center in conducting training in this area of WAM. And needless to say that if you're doing training, the baseline assessment is very, very useful. And so we thank UNIDIR for having this exercise, this tool ready, not just for us, but especially for countries. And I will come to that level of how useful the baseline assessment can be for countries that need it. Because when we look at some of the gaps that already exist, and I'm happy that Hadi and Ilka mentioned national ownership, because that is where things should really start and build up. The bottom-up approach, which Albrecht also referred to, is extremely important in the sense that it would complement what is done at the regional level. And even though at the global level, at the international level, we here in New York, we try to bring, to look into how standards, international standard can be developed. But the real work has to be at the national level. And for that work to be effective, the national ownership is important. But we've noticed, for those of us who have had the opportunity of working in the field, we've realized that even in one country, there is lack of harmony. You would see the police has its own standard, the gendarmerie, the military, etc., etc. So while differences may exist, there is a need to have some standardization or some harmonization in the manner in which weapons and ammunition management is conducted in country. And for this to happen practically in a harmonious way, there needs to be at a legislative level some language that is included in the legal framework. I know that in many countries, an effort has been made in updating national legislation and etc. But even now, when you look at some of this legislation, you will realize that from the perspective of weapons and ammunition management, there are still some gaps that can be looked at very closely. I'll give you an example or two examples. One is the cultural dimension of weapons and ammunition. When you look at what weapons serve in many countries, where you go to East Africa, for instance, you have those who have their cattle, they have to go around with weapons, and it's allowed, it's part of their culture. Or you come to West Africa, in many parts of it, where weapons are used for other traditional ceremonies and etc. All of this we have to look at the applicability of this when it comes to weapons and ammunition management. And the second example is civilian ownership of weapons, how effectively WAM can be applied to it, when increasingly we have even we have security companies, private security companies involved in ownership of weapons and using these weapons. How effectively can weapons and ammunition management, the baseline tool, apply to it? It would be very interesting to hear how UNIDIR in assessment had to deal with this issue. And I would just like to now, in concluding, to just say that, you know, the issue of weapons and ammunition management is dear to us at ODA. The Secretary General, in his agenda for disarmament, looked at it very closely, and Action 22 says it all. And Action 20, you know, how we can weapons should be managed, not just because of the safety and the safety perspective. We know what has been happening, especially when it comes to ammunition. Equatorial Guinea, we just did some work there because of the explosions that happened in the ammunition depot, and not long ago also in Lebanon. So the safety perspective is extremely important, and the security, the dimension, is also very important. And you all saw that 2 months ago, BMS 7 was really focused on the issue of diversion. Diversion is part of the assessment. It should be part of the assessment, because when weapons and ammunition are well managed, the issue of diversion can be reduced. And when you're looking at WAM, you just don't have to look at it from the point of view of weapons depots. It's the whole life cycle of weapons and ammunition. And I'm happy that the assessment look at it from this perspective. It would be good to look at when a weapon is manufactured, when ammunition are manufactured, from when they leave where they are manufactured to their users, and so on. So it's the whole life cycle, and this issue of diversion is very important. And it's also the perspective that the GGE on ammunition that just concluded its work in August took, to look at it from the perspective of safety and security. This is the comprehensive approach, which hopefully is going to carry on. And I was happy to hear Albrecht talking about what is happening now in the General Assembly with a resolution, the draft L47, which we are all working on. And hopefully in the coming week, we would begin to work on the establishment of an open-ended working group that will look at the issue of weapons, ammunition management. Weapons management, yes, somehow, even though they are parallel track, the POA and the GGE that just happened, I believe somehow, somewhere states will need to look at the meeting point, because when it comes to usage, you cannot separate ammunition from the weapons. But in these diplomatic processes, we separate them. So somehow, somewhere, state will have to look at how to confront this. What else can I mention? I was also happy to hear that many of the tools at our disposal, how do you make use of them, Mosaic and IATG, especially IATG, we would need to look at how we can complement the safety dimension of it, because right now, IATG are looking at management of ammunition, largely from the perspective of safety. But with the comprehensive approach, we would need to look at it more widely to include the security dimension. And this is why it is important to begin to look at the development of security technical guidelines to complement what is already in existence. We should not forget that weapons and ammunition management is important, but we also have to look at the reason why it is weak, and it is weak in many countries because they don't have the capacity. So in doing our work, let's build in international cooperation and assistance to WAM to make it even much more effective. We in the Office of Disarmament Affairs, we're trying to look at this by putting in place UNSCAR, the UN facility supporting cooperation in arms regulation, and Salient, small arms saving lives entity, which are two funding strengths that we have to support WAM and others. And I'm happy to see that Halo Trust is here because they are beneficiary of UNSCAR support. So thank you. Hopefully when we come to questions, we'll be able to go deeper into some of these things that I'm just mentioning in passing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ivor, for touching on very critical issues in weapons and ammunition management. It is great to learn that the Security Council is now including provisions on WAM in its mandates for peace operations. And also we want to thank UNODA for all your efforts and work you are doing in promoting WAM. You mentioned the effective WAM in DDR training course, and I was very privileged to join that course this year. So thank you for such efforts that you're making on UNODA's level. And I will now hand over the floor to Dr. Sani Adamu from ECOWAS. Dr. Sani will share lessons from ECOWAS's experiences in partnering with UNIDIR and other partners in conducting weapons and ammunition management baseline assessments in 7 ECOWAS states. So Dr. Sani, thank you for joining us, and you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Thank you for inviting ECOWAS. I wish to firstly bring to you all greetings from ECOWAS Commission. The strategic partnership between ECOWAS and UNIDIR has been very impactful over the last 3-4 years. Since we started the intervention, as we have heard from Heidi, of the 11 countries that have actually done the assessment, 7 of them are from ECOWAS region. There's no gainsaying, therefore, that ECOWAS Commission is actually fully ready and translating this partnership into concrete actions by mobilizing as much as possible our countries so that effectively, region-wide, we'll be able to have the BA assessment The importance of it is to say that ECOWAS Commission has seen of the 7 countries a lot of tremendous efforts on the part of national governments to be able to look at the gaps, based on the assessments. And I must say, for instance, in Nigeria, the gaps in terms of institutional arrangement efforts, the government has taken it on board, resulting from the intervention of this assessment. They have put in place a robust national center that is going to be saddled with the responsibilities of controlling small arms and light weapons. With respect to Liberia, Liberia has taken on board, the need for them to actually look at the legislative framework of the country. And I'm happy to say that a lot of efforts are ongoing in Liberia to be able to update not only the firearms law or the Firearms Act of the country, but also the act establishing the national implementation framework. So these are some of the key practical successes so far that we have recorded, and a lot of other member states that are on this on the 7th BA assessment that have been done are taking various systematic efforts, towards actually, putting in place standards, that will allow them to bring to bear a lot of the experiences of the assessment. So I'm happy to say at the level of ECOWAS, ECOWAS Commission Management has taken, the BA assessment seriously, to the extent that we have now internalized in our budget, in our regional budget, this partnership with UNIDIR, semblance of, counterpart support, counterpart funding from ECOWAS Commission is now in place to be able to accompany this process. This is important, in order to register the regional ownership of this process. ECOWAS Commission is also, in engagement, politically with our member states, so that the remaining member states will also be able to do the assessment. Already, ECOWAS and UNIDIR were at top level in terms of preparation to be able to conduct the same assessment in Togo as well as in Benin Republic in November. So I'm happy to say that we are deepening this partnership. We are also seeing the partnership as an important segment that will allow us to effectively, implement the ECOWAS Convention on Small Arms and Light Weapons. I'm happy with Albrecht, His Excellency made mention of the fact that we are always consistently, showcasing, regional coordination efforts as the best way to go. Anyhow, anywhere, if regionally processes are coordinated, like we are seeing within the framework of the WAM assessment, we'll be able to achieve significant results. We'll be able to also cover as many, countries as possible. So I want to also mention that the ECOWAS Commission is having already has elaborated a comprehensive 5-year strategic plan that will see to the effective implementation of the convention in the next 5 years. I would like to put on the record and to commend Albrecht for the leadership, the GFFO, for providing the seed funds, for instance, that allowed the experts, that elaborated the initial, work plan, the program plan, and also for taking the lead in terms of mobilizing, partners around the world to be able to accompany ECOWAS to implement effectively this plan. I also want to, commend the EU. The EU provided already the funds that will support one of the key components of the plan, and UNODA is actually the implementing partner. So we want to also register our comments to commend UNODA through my big brother Ivo. They have been working around the clock, and anytime soon, our management is looking at the final phase of concluding the implementation arrangement for the plan. And we have in the coming week, we have a tripartite meeting with the GFFO to be able to conclude on the plan. I need to register and put forward this, so that I will inform this distinguished gathering that the WAM assessment, we intend to deepen, the continuation of the WAM assessment, not only the assessment phase, but also practically on the ground to see that member states are accompanied, effectively, so that gaps that are already identified, they are being supported, so that all of these gaps are filled up. So I would like to say also again that the lessons learned seminar that we jointly conducted with UNIDIR was also very impactful, very instructive. We have seen, some of the lessons, that based on the already conducted assessments, and it's important that periodically, after engaging in some activities, we take lessons so that we'll be able to really forge ahead. I would like to stop here. Certainly, we have a lot to say, but this is an important side event. Launching the methodology is very important in Spanish. Yes, in Spanish language, it's important that we continue to see that other regions of the world are also keyed into this initiative. On the final note, I would like to once again, commend UNIDIR for this sincere partnership with ECOWAS Commission, and we assure all our partners that we continue to remain available for effective partnership like this. And just to reiterate that regional coordination processes is the practical way to go, and ECOWAS is a clear model. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sani, for this intervention. It is very useful to hear the tangible results that some states and some progress that states have made after conducting one baseline assessment. So thank you for taking time to highlight some of these progress stories from different ECOWAS member states. And we also appreciated how you highlighted the different partnerships you have with UN entities, including UNIDIR and ODA, and with governments, including the government of Germany, and also with other sub-regional organizations in the states. So this highlights the inclusivity that Hadi also pointed at as a key principle of one baseline assessments. So thank you, Dr. Sani, for your intervention, which was very interesting. I will now hand the floor to Mr. Laurie Clapton, who is the head of weapons and ammunition management at Halo Trust. I have learned that UNIDIR is having an engagement with Halo Trust on WAM in the Northern Triangle. So would like to hear your perspectives on that and how you see the issue of WAM being experienced in this region. So Laurie, you have the floor. Thank you for joining.
Thank you very much, Anna. So I won't belabor the point about how important WAM is, as we wouldn't be on this panel if we didn't believe that WAM was important. Instead, I'll focus particularly on the UNIDIR baseline assessment in the Northern Triangle. So I think one of the key points to draw out of the UNIDIR baseline assessment process that I experienced in Africa was often it's navigating gaps or entire missing institutions, weak institutions. Frameworks have to be made bespoke for countries which simply don't have them. Often their security frameworks are patched together from a number of different security assistance actors working together across the donor community. And the baseline assessment process is about bringing all those together and trying to understand how to make a WAM framework out of them. And that's the greatest challenge often in fragile states. I think now that this reference methodology is in French and Spanish, and it expands into other countries, particularly those with more developed and long histories of complex legal processes, it will have to develop and evolve. And I hope that our experience in the Northern Triangle will be an important educational moment in that process. I've just come back from El Salvador and Guatemala, where we have a WAM program working with the Guatemalan and El Salvadorian militaries and governments. There's incredible existing knowledge and education, experience, infrastructure, and in particular, there's a very robust and mature legal framework and regulatory framework that exists in these countries. And indeed, one of the greatest problems that we're having in engaging and dealing with stakeholders is that this regulatory framework is frankly too robust. It's incredibly effective at regulating the way in which small arms and ammunition are managed in these countries, to the point to which that members of government, stakeholders, and parts of the military aren't certain at what point their responsibilities end to certain aspects, because it's over-legalized, if anything over-legalized. And so what we hope primarily from the UNIDIR baseline assessment process in this year is that we'll be able to unpick some of those and understand who should be holding what powers and how to move forward some of our stockpile management work. As to give you an example, there's aspects in the Northern Triangle where the responsibility for holding the weapons registration database sits between two different parts of the security services, one military, one police, with an unclear civilian responsibility as well. Although the legislation is there, it doesn't provide for end of life. So there's no clear responsibility for disposal, nor is there a clear avenue for the police to access weapons registration records, national records, without making sort of time-consuming requests to the military. And so I think one of the things that we're going to see when we carry out this baseline assessment is the difficulties of engaging with robust legal systems and trying to make space for projects and programs to have concrete next steps. Which brings me on to the second point, which I think we've discussed previously in reviews of how the baseline assessment process went in Africa, which is that there needs to be concrete next steps to the baseline assessments. These are detailed and comprehensive pieces of work. The roadmaps are often ambitious and multi-year. And sometimes the most important thing for both national stakeholders, but donor stakeholders also, is to see concrete progress being made on these areas soon after the baseline process is delivered. And that's where I feel that international NGOs and implementers can step forward and provide the connection to the donors and the funding in existing projects to move forward some of UNIDIR's recommendations after their high-level engagement. So in the Northern Triangle, we hope to bring those both together, and in our partnership with UNIDIR to assess these gaps or even these knots, if you will, of the legal and judicial apparatus, and with the help of UNIDIR and with the consent of the stakeholders, find ways to unpick them in a way that allows WAM to move forward in those countries. And then to follow those up with concrete, meaningful projects within our existing portfolio. So ultimately, that's our ambition for the Northern Triangle. I think it will be a very interesting experience, educational, but also very meaningful for both countries and for Halo. So I personally will be looking forward to that. And I know, having just come from El Salvador, the teams there are very much looking forward to the process. I'll end on that note then, which that it's excellent to see that these framework has been translated into French and Spanish. And I look forward to more opportunities for UNIDIR to work with the international implementing community to develop concrete next steps moving WAM forward in more and more regions and countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Laurie, for this insightful intervention. Thanks for highlighting some of the challenges and issues experienced in WAM by some states in the Northern Triangle, for also highlighting the role that INGOs and international implementing partners can do and can support in strengthening WAM frameworks. And I also want to let you know that the UNIDIR team is also really looking forward to collaborating with Halo Trust for the upcoming work in the Northern Triangle. So thank you for being with us here. Finally, I have the pleasure of inviting Ms. Savannah de Tessiers, who is an independent expert, and I have personally worked with on some of the baseline assessments. So she has been an member of the expert team, and Savannah has so many insights to share. I will not even try to describe them, but I'll just hand over the floor to Savannah at this time.
Thank you very much, Anna. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for having me today. And as Anna explained, I'm happy to be here to take this opportunity to share some of the insights as a WAM practitioner, as someone who's been implementing WAM baseline assessments for the past 5 years as part of the UNIDIR CAPS team. And first, I wanted to say that I'm really very pleased to see the translation of this important piece of methodology into French and Spanish, because too often literature related to WAM assessments, documentation, and so on is only available in English, which is obviously not compatible with national ownership when it comes to countries where English is not spoken. So I commend this effort too, and along the number of national WAM briefs that Hardy mentioned earlier that have also been translated into French, and you can have a look at UNIDIR's website to find those. Second, I just wanted to share some observations on the implementation of such assessments, so it becomes a little bit more concrete for people who are not familiar with them. On a personal note, before embarking on my first assessment and knowing too well the sensitivities linked to information related to weapons and ammunition, I really wondered how this was going to go. I wondered whether the relevant authorities were going to be there, were going to be eager to participate. I was a bit worried, to be honest, but actually each time I have been really amazed by the eagerness of the national authorities to participate and build this assessment, and the transparency with regards to sometimes difficult thematics such as diversion, such as transfer controls, and so on. And by observing those assessments, I realized how much they were important and useful for the range of national authorities that were present there, not only in terms of the findings, but also in terms of the benefits of the event itself. So first, this assessment brings together all security agencies around the table and relevant national stakeholders, which is actually in some countries quite rare due to sometimes the lack of national coordination, but also due to sometimes competitiveness between security agencies. So that was useful in that sense. Second, this sort of national dialogue brings together both senior representatives of those security agencies at strategic, decisionary, policy levels, as well as national technical experts working more at ground level. For instance, I'm thinking about licensing officers, armorers, ammunition technical officers, and so on. And so these assessments also provide the opportunity, a fora for these various levels of WAM implementers to have direct exchanges, to exchange views, which is often, which is quite rare as well to organize nationally. Another factor is that by doing this assessment and bringing all these actors together, national authorities realize the extent to which WAM is a cross-cutting concept, and that a range of their ministries and agencies are actually implementing WAM activities throughout a range of stabilization, of humanitarian processes such as DDR, such as SSR, mine action, small arms like weapons programming, and so on. And so to map existing efforts and build a national strategy is key for them to give direction and to have a coherent approach to WAM activities across governmental interventions. Finally, the findings of the assessment support authorities in building their national strategy, their roadmap, but also support their resource mobilization strategies and allow for the evaluation of progress over time. That's for national actors. Around the WAM assessment table are also invited international actors, international partners involved in supporting WAM activities and WAM capacity in the country. Sometimes they're invited during the whole assessment, and sometimes there is a dedicated session for international implementers, and that depends on how the national authorities see the organization of the event, and obviously see, of course, the sensitivity with regards to some information related to their own stockpile. Here again, assessments are great opportunities for the authorities to sort of map out what's going on in the country, what are the international partners present, and it's also a great way for international actors to create more coordination links, mechanism with, or at least to reinforce them with national authorities and also with other international stakeholders. A last point I wanted to share from my perspective as an international consultant is the rapid recognition and the rapid adoption and use of the WAM concept across international stakeholders. As you could tell from the short presentations of Ivor, of Laurie, and of Dr. Sani just before me, the term WAM is pretty young. I think the first time it appeared in a Security Council resolution was in 2013. But nowadays, it's not only applied by UN agencies and implementers of UN programs, but also by a range of regional organizations such as ECOWAS. The EU starts using this concept as well as the OSCE, and of course, a number of member states and non-governmental organizations. And for me, this is not surprising, since I really believe that WAM fills a gap in conventional arms control, where small arms and light weapons and disarmament have been the main agendas, i.e. agendas that focus mostly on small arms light weapons, i.e. excluding weapons of larger calibers, excluding ammunition, and focusing also mostly on illicit small arms light weapons, so not really taking into consideration legal weapons related activities. So WAM allows practitioners working at any point in the WAM continuum and on transfers controls, on destruction, on tracing, and under any governance or stabilization related activity, being SSR, DDR, mine action, and so on, to speak the same language and to work coherently at national and regional levels. This rapid adoption and use of the concept by so many international actors, I think, would merit further international exchange, dialogue on the question, so to foster and reinforce our practice and synergies. To finish, and this is maybe a question for the discussion if we have time, or for later consideration, we noticed during Hardy's and Dr. Sani's presentation that ECOWAS has been the main testing ground for WAM baseline assessments, and which were very successful in my view in most of those countries. And I'm wondering how we could pursue these efforts in regions where you have less history, less experience of conventional arms control, national coordination, or national policy. And so we can maybe work more in other regions, but that's just food for thought. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the questions.
Thank you very much, Savannah. Very great highlights and insights from in-country implementation of the WAM baseline assessment. So thank you. I see many questions in the chat, but unfortunately we'll not be able to go through all of them due to time constraints, but I will pick up a few and hope that our panelists will support in answering them and providing more details on their perspectives on that as well. So the first question I think will go to Hadi Gizindana. And this question also relates to the food for thought that Savannah left us with. So the question says, is there any plan or strategy to support arms and ammunition transfers and control to war-affected countries such as Afghanistan. I'm sure that question relates to how can the concept of WAM and effective weapons and ammunition management be transferred and implemented in affected countries. So Hadi, if you'll be able to share your insights on this, we'll be very grateful for that.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you for that question, which I believe is a good one and a complex one as well. I think to bring this to the weapons WAM national baseline and reference methodology, this methodology can be used to assess the WAM capability in a country and by a host government and parties. Of course, it takes into account the acquisition of material and transfers as well, and it takes into account risk-based approaches that may be applied in such contexts, including the prevention of diversions at different stages of international transfers prior to, during, and after the transfer, including the post-delivery cooperation phases as well. So that's how I see it relating to the WAM reference methodology. But and this response has been quite short, not very elaborate. But I would like to draw the attention of the person who asked the question to other UNIDIR resources and tools as well that are available from us, or to reach out to us to provide these specifically relating to the prevention of diversions during and along the different stages of international arms transfers. This with regards to the first question, and for the second one, Anna, maybe I would invite another colleague or panelist or to repeat it for me one more time, please.
Thank you very much, Hadi, for answering this first question. I think you actually shared insights on the second one as well. So without spending too much time on that question, I will move to another question which has been asked so that we can save on time. One question I've seen is, when a WAM, I think maybe Savannah, if you could support in answering this, it says when a WAM roadmap has been established after a baseline assessment, what can states do after that? How do they partner with interested stakeholders and organizations to carry forward the options that have been identified? So Savannah, I hope this was a little clear, but I can also repeat it again. I think the question basically says, what are the next steps after a WAM roadmap has been established after a baseline assessment?
Thank you, Anna. I think it's a key question, and actually Laurie mentioned that as well, that it's not always clear what's going to happen after an assessment, and it's true for any assessment throughout any sort of stabilization program or other programs. I guess it's up to the national authorities, once they have this roadmap, to also make sure they're mobilizing the right actors in there at national level, but also at external level. Obviously, in the case of Western Africa, you have national coordinating bodies, so often as the National Commission on Small Arms and Light Weapons, which are basically carrying the work, so trying to implement this roadmap and basically prioritizing the various activities that have been decided during the WAM baseline assessment. Let's also people should also understand that when you come in the country and you implement a WAM baseline assessment, it's not like there's nothing. There are already a billion activities are ongoing. So it's also a way to kind of evaluate where we are at and what are the resources needed to complete and finalize sometimes sort of shorter roadmaps or roadmaps that are that are lighter in scope, for instance, only on PSSM, so to make sure that what is already also ongoing can be finalized. But please, I'll be happy to hear from our other panelists on this. And yes, I mean, I'm not sure if we have any concrete example of activities that have been implemented since roadmaps from A to Z. At the same time, UNIDIR being a research body and not a technical body, in terms of WAM on the ground, you may have partnered also with a range of partners who would have told you about the results of their activities on that.
Thank you very much, Savannah. Unfortunately, Dr. Sani had to leave for another meeting. Otherwise, I'm sure he could have shared some examples from how ECOWAS states moved on with the roadmaps. But I will ask Hadi if he has any insights to share on that briefly. And then I'll move to the third and final question that we can address this time and then move on. Okay, all right. It seems there are too many questions. So Hadi has requested that we pass on to the next one so that we can end on time, which we have already used the time. I think the next question, if Ivor is still with us, because this is a question asking about some multilateral efforts in weapons and ammunition management. So the question says, it is great to see that the Security Council is now including WAM provisions in its mandates to some peace operations. At the multilateral level, what are some next steps that you envisage? Where do we move from here? How can we strengthen strategic approaches on weapons and ammunition management? So Ivor, if you're with us, thank you for sharing any brief insights you can say on this one.
Yes, I liked what Savannah just said when she underlined the fact that the term WAM, weapons and ammunition management, is relatively new. And indeed it is, because the assessment that UNIDIR has conducted, and I was just listening to the other question, what next? When an assessment has been conducted, what next? I don't think there has been a standard next step after an assessment like this is conducted. And that's the reason why there is that emphasis on the national ownership. States need to assess their own priorities when an assessment has been conducted, for them to see what is the priority. How do they want to go? Because an assessment can come up and say, listen, what is very serious in their practices is that the arms depots are so old, they are falling apart, and etc. And what the country has to do is to look at it and say, okay, I will give priority to this. But it was just to shed some light on that previous question. Coming back to the question on multilateralism, the practice of the Security Council, again, is not where it should be in terms of systematically including the WAM provisions in peace operation mandates. So it has to continue to do so. And we keep, as much as possible, reminding them to systematically include. And that's usually the essence of the debate, like the briefing that just took place, where they create that kind of opportunity for states to revisit, for members of the council to revisit the issue and see how they can adjust. Usually, when it's successful, the council comes up with a product. A product in this sense is either the minimum is a press communique, or a presidential statement, or at best, a resolution. And we've had about 2 resolutions so far by the council. So in terms of the next step really is, and I said it earlier, I said that there are 2 parallel tracks that are going on. even though they are not solely focused on WAM, but they include WAM provisions. You have the POA process that is going on that also allows states to talk about it. And BMS 8 is coming up in a few months in June next year. Then you have the ammunition process that is also coming up. Hopefully in a few days, a resolution will be adopted, setting up an open-ended working group on the issue of ammunition that hopefully will lead to the negotiation of a global framework on ammunition. So these are areas that are coming up where the issue of weapons and ammunition management can be articulated in various ways. There is no process at a multilateral level solely focusing on weapons and ammunition management, but they are larger frameworks where the issue can be articulated and is being articulated. The way I see it, I will encourage UNIDIR to make sure that it takes this process forward. It is true that UNIDIR, as Savannah said, is a technical institution, a research institution that does not do operational work on the ground, but there are other areas where UNIDIR can build on this assessment. The assessment, the way it's been conducted, I've not been associated to it, but I believe that it was mostly field-oriented. But maybe if UNIDIR want to elevate the standard of it, it might be advisable to look at how an international effort, international forum can really sit around and look at what the work that it has done predominantly in West Africa, as we have seen, or in Africa, as we have seen, can be shared with other regions of the world, can be shared with Latin America and the Caribbean, with Asia and etc. And for that to happen, maybe sitting around the table could be the way to go, where other regions would bring what they also have as practices. It doesn't mean that if the assessment is not conducted, that countries are not doing weapons and ammunition management, and some do it very effectively, and good practices also have to be shared. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ivo. This is very great. Thanks for all the ideas that you have shared. I sincerely apologize that we'll not be able to address and discuss all the other questions currently on this platform. And so I want to assure the participants who have asked the questions that the UNIDIR team will follow up with you after this meeting to provide answers, and also where we'll need to connect you to some of the panelists and some of the organizations and partners here, we will do that. So thank you for your patience and for your understanding on this. At this time, I will hand over to Dr. Paul Holtom, who is the head of the Conventional Arms Program of UNIDIR, to provide the closing remarks. Thank you for your time and for joining us. Dr. Holtom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Anna. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we've now hit the 90-minute mark, which is about the perfect length for a decent movie, a decent film. And therefore, much like the credits at the end of a film, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude and thanks to all of you that have made this event such a success. Of course, thanks to the excellent moderation of my colleague Anna, the wonderful panelists, and also, of course, my colleagues working so diligently behind the scenes to deliver this wonderful event to you all today. Thanks also, of course, to the governments of Finland, Germany, and Switzerland for their generous support to enable us to continue supporting states to undertake WAM baseline assessments, and also for making the reference methodology available in different languages. And of course, thank you to all of our former, current, and future WAM partners. We're very interested to see the results of the application of the French, Spanish, and English versions of the WAM baseline assessment. And so to today, where we launched the French and Spanish editions of the reference methodology in English, I should reassure you all that we do plan in 2022 to hold events in French and in Spanish to make sure that those language communities are also aware of the wonderful materials that my colleagues have created here. We're also open to requests for making the methodology available in other languages, and offers to translate or support such efforts are very welcome. I noticed also on this call, our Lusophone community also of interest with the WAM baseline assessment methodology. I'm sure other communities would also welcome this, and so we'll keep an eye on this particular effort too. And I'm extremely grateful for several of our panelists emphasizing not just the methodology as a living document, and we, particular, as Hardy emphasized, look forward to hearing feedback on its use, but that it's a learning experience for us. And we're very encouraged by some of the snippets of information provided by Dr. Sani and others about the way in which the WAM baseline assessment roadmaps are contributing to not just the articulation of assistance needs, but also providing a way of monitoring progress and efforts to sort of strengthen regulation and control of weapons and ammunition management in efforts to tackle illicit proliferation and misuse. And I can reassure some of the challenges that Savannah, Iva, and others have put forward in terms of trying to collect the information and the progress that's been made over the years by my predecessors and by many of my colleagues still working at UNIDIR. But this is something we're looking to put forward and hopefully to sort of carry forward the lessons learned seminar in different ways. So please, as good films say right at the end, watch this space for the sequels that will come forward with regard to these events. And with that, I'd like to wish you all a very good start to the week, a wonderful Monday, and please keep us informed of the use of the reference methodology, and we'll certainly keep you informed of developments with regard to this body of work at UNIDIR. Thank you so much. Wish you all the best. And with that, Anna, I'll pass over to you to close us up and to say farewell. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul, for your closing remarks. All I want to say is thank you again to our panelists, to our donors, to all the participants for your interesting questions and interest in WAM and in the baseline assessments. And we remain available to support states, organizations who are interested in this. So please feel free to reach out to us, send us an email, also download the methodology and ask any questions that you have. Thank you very much and wish you a nice week.